Three wealthy men forced a struggling nursing student to her knees for a $100 bill, laughing as they refused to pay their $4,000 restaurant tab. They thought they were untouchable. They thought no one could stop them. But they didn't see the quiet old man in the corner booth, a man who didn't just own the restaurant. He owned their entire futures. What happened next will give you chills. And 5 years later, she saved one of their lives. This is a true story about karma, and I promise you won't believe how this ends. Stay with me. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you a story that will restore your faith in karma. It's about a young woman named Emma, 3 cruel men who thought money made them kings, and one quiet stranger who changed everything. Picture this, a cold Wednesday evening in Chicago. The kind of night where the wind cuts through your jacket and makes you wish you were anywhere but outside. Emma Rodriguez was starting her evening shift at the Golden Oak, one of those fancy restaurants where a single steak costs more than most people's weekly groceries. Emma was exhausted. Not just tired from working, but exhausted in her soul. She was 24 years old, studying nursing at Roosevelt University, and she was drowning. Her textbooks cost hundreds of dollars. Her rent was overdue by 2 months. That morning, she'd received a final notice from her landlord: pay up or get out. She had exactly 1 week. Nursing school wasn't like other programs. She couldn't skip classes to pick up extra shifts because if she missed clinical training, she'd fail. She couldn't fall asleep during lectures because one mistake, one wrong medication dosage in her future, could kill someone. The pressure was crushing her, but she kept going. Why? Because Emma had watched her mother die from an illness that could have been caught earlier if they'd had better health care. If someone had cared enough to really look at her. Emma became a nurse so she could be that person who cared. But tonight, caring wasn't going to pay her bills. She checked her reflection in the brass mirror near the kitchen. Her eyes had dark circles that makeup couldn't quite hide. Her uniform was pressed and clean, but she'd stitched up a tear in the sleeve herself because she couldn't afford a new one. She took a deep breath, painted on a smile, and walked onto the dining floor. The restaurant manager, Mr. Peterson, grabbed her arm as she passed. "Table 7, he hissed. "Big spenders. Don't mess this up. We need good reviews from these types." Emma nodded and looked toward table 7. Her heart sank. 3 men in expensive suits were settling into the booth, laughing loudly at something on one of their phones. The leader was obvious, a tall man with perfectly styled dark hair and a watch that probably cost more than Emma's entire year of tuition. His name was Derek Wolfe, though Emma didn't know that yet. Behind him were his 2 friends, Justin, who looked like he spent more time at the gym than at work, and Kyle, who seemed nervous but desperate to impress the others. They didn't wait for anyone to help them. They just took over the space like they owned it, dropping their jackets on the extra chairs, spreading out their phones and wallets across the table like territory markers. Emma walked over with her notepad ready. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Golden Oak. My name is Emma, and I'll be—" "Water," Derek interrupted without looking up from his phone. "Sparkling. Not tap water, obviously. And make sure the glasses are actually cold. Last time I was here, they were room temperature. Unacceptable." "Of course, sir. Can I—" "And bread," Justin added, scrolling through his own phone. "But only if it's warm. If it's cold, don't even bother bringing it out." Emma wrote it down. "Absolutely. I'll have that right out for you." As she turned to leave, she heard Derek mutter to his friends, just loud enough for her to hear. $5 says she messes up the water order." They laughed. That casual, careless laughter of people who've never worried about anything real in their entire lives. Emma's face burned, but she kept walking. She'd dealt with difficult customers before. You smile, you serve, you survive. That's the job. But as she filled the water glasses at the bar, her hands were shaking slightly. She couldn't afford to mess this up. She needed the tips. She needed this job. She needed to make it through one more night. What she didn't notice was the older gentleman sitting alone in the corner booth near the kitchen. He was easy to miss, probably in his 70s, wearing a simple gray cardigan that had seen better days. He had a cup of regular black coffee and a worn paperback novel. He looked like someone's grandfather, maybe a retired teacher or shopkeeper, just having a quiet dinner alone. His name was William Hart, though Emma had only ever called him Mr. Hart during the few times she'd served him. He came in once or twice a month, always ordered something simple, always left a decent tip, and always had a kind word. In a job where people often treated her like she was invisible, Mr. Hart always said please and thank you. Right now, Mr. Hart had put down his book. He was watching table 7 with sharp, intelligent eyes. Emma brought the water to the table, setting down each glass carefully. Derek picked his up, took a sip, and immediately made a disgusted face. "This is too cold," he announced. "It hurts my teeth. Bring me a new one. Room temperature." Emma blinked. "You just said you wanted it cold, sir. Are you arguing with me?" Derek's voice got louder. Other diners were starting to look over. "I know what I said. I want room temperature water. Is that too complicated for you to understand?" Justin and Kyle snickered. Emma's face went red, but she kept her voice steady. "Not at all, sir. I'll bring you a fresh glass right away." As she walked back to the bar, she heard Justin say, "Dude, why are you being so harsh?" And Derek's response made her blood run cold. "Because it's funny. Besides, people like her need to learn their place." Emma gripped the edge of the bar counter. Her eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. She needed this job. She needed the money. She just had to survive tonight. She had no idea that this night was about to change her entire life. The next hour was a nightmare. Emma had dealt with demanding customers before, but Derek and his friends were different. They weren't just picky, they were cruel. It was like they'd made a game out of humiliating her, and they were keeping score. Every time she brought something to the table, there was a problem. The bread was too warm. Then it was too cold. The butter was too hard. Then it was too soft. Derek sent back his salad because there was too much dressing, even though he'd specifically asked for extra dressing. When she brought a new one with light dressing, he claimed it was too dry. Justin ordered a steak medium rare, then insisted it was overcooked and demanded a new one. When the chef sent out a replacement, perfectly medium rare, Emma had checked it herself. Justin cut into it, chewed once, and said, "Now it's too raw. What is wrong with your kitchen?" Kyle was quieter, but he went along with everything. When Derek made a joke at Emma's expense, Kyle laughed. When Justin snapped his fingers to get her attention like she was a dog, Kyle said nothing. The bill was climbing. They'd ordered appetizers, expensive steaks, bottles of wine that cost $200 each. By Emma's mental calculation, they were approaching $4,000. If they left even a 15% tip, that would be $600. Enough to pay her rent. Enough to buy groceries and make her student loan payment. She just had to make it through. But Derek wasn't done. "Excuse me," he called out loudly, making sure other tables could hear. "Can you come here, please?" Emma hurried over. "Yes, sir? Is everything all right?" Derek held up his wine glass to the light, squinting at it dramatically. "There's lipstick on this glass." Emma looked closely. The glass was spotless. "Sir, I don't see any. Are you calling me a liar?" Derek's voice rose. Several nearby diners turned to watch. "No, sir, Look at this." Derek showed the glass to Justin and Kyle. "Do you see that? Lipstick. This is disgusting. This is unsanitary." There was no lipstick. Emma knew there was no lipstick. But she also knew that arguing would make everything worse. "I sincerely apologize, sir. Let me bring you a fresh glass immediately. And wash your hands first," Derek added with a smirk. "We don't know where you've been." Justin burst out laughing. Kyle looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Emma walked back to the kitchen, her throat tight. She ducked into the storage room for just 10 seconds, just long enough to take 3 deep breaths and force the tears back down. She couldn't cry. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. When she returned with a new wine glass, Derek didn't even look at it. He waved his hand dismissively. "Just pour it. We're bored of this game anyway." That's what she was to them. A game. Mr. Peterson, the manager, had been watching from across the restaurant. But he didn't come over to help. He didn't tell the men to calm down. Because Derek had mentioned loudly that his father owned a major real estate company, that his family invested in restaurants. Peterson wanted their money more than he cared about his employees' dignity. Emma was on her own. The meal dragged on. They ordered dessert, 3 slices of the most expensive cake on the menu, and barely touched it. They ordered after-dinner drinks. They were in no hurry to leave. Finally, around 10:30, Derek pushed his plate away. "All right, get us the check. Some of us have real jobs to get to in the morning." Emma's heart lifted slightly. Almost over. Just get through the payment, and this nightmare ends. She printed the bill for $200 and brought it to the table in the leather folder. Derek opened it, glanced at the total, and whistled. "Wow, that's a lot of money." He looked at his friends. What do you guys think? Should we pay this? I don't know, man, Justin said, grinning. The service was pretty terrible. Right. Derek leaned back in his chair. I mean, the lipstick on the glass? The cold bread? The overcooked steak? Emma's stomach dropped. Gentlemen, if there was a problem with the food or service, I can get the manager. Oh, there was definitely a problem, Derek said. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his credit card. But he didn't put it in the folder. Instead, he tapped it against the table, looking Emma up and down. Tell you what, I'll pay this bill if you do something for me. Emma felt ice run down her spine. Sir, apologize. I've already apologized several times tonight for. No, Derek interrupted. I mean, really apologize. Get on your knees and apologize for your terrible service. The restaurant seemed to go quiet. Emma could feel people staring. I'm not going to do that, Emma said softly. Derek's smile vanished. Then I'm not paying. You have to pay for what you ordered, sir. That's the law. Derek stood up, his face close to hers. The law? Do you know who my father is? Do you know what kind of lawyers we keep on retainer? We could bury you in legal fees before you even got to court. He tossed the credit card on the table. Matter of fact, I've changed my mind. We're not paying at all. The service was so bad, we shouldn't have to pay. That's theft, Emma said, her voice shaking. Prove it, Derek said. Call the cops. See if they believe a waitress or a wolf. Justin and Kyle stood up, following Derek's lead. Emma felt panic rising in her chest. $4,000. The restaurant would make her cover it. She'd be fired. She'd lose everything. Please, she whispered. Please don't do this. And that's when a quiet voice came from the corner of the restaurant. Gentlemen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Everyone turned to look at Mr. Hart. Mr. Hart stood up slowly from his corner booth. He moved like someone who had all the time in the world, carefully folding his napkin and setting it on the table. He picked up his cane, a simple wooden cane that Emma had never really noticed before, and walked toward table 7. Derek looked annoyed at the interruption. Can we help you, old man? This doesn't concern you. Oh, but it does, Mr. Hart said gently. He had a soft voice, the kind that made you lean in to listen. You see, young man, everything that happens in this restaurant concerns me. Justin laughed. Why, you a food critic or something? Something like that, Mr. Hart replied. He turned to Emma, and his eyes were kind. Emma, dear, why don't you take a moment? Go get yourself a glass of water. You look pale. I'm fine, Mr. Hart. I insist, he said. I'll handle this. Derek crossed his arms. Look, Grandpa, we don't have time for. You don't have time? Mr. Hart's voice didn't get louder, but somehow it filled the whole restaurant. You've had time for the past 3 hours to torment this young woman. You've had time to send back perfectly good food. You've had time to play cruel games. But now you don't have time to pay your bill. We're not paying because the service was garbage, Derek shot back. The service was impeccable, Mr. Hart said. I've been watching. Emma has shown more patience and grace in one evening than you 3 have shown in your entire lives. Kyle shifted uncomfortably. Look, sir, we're just trying to steal. Mr. Hart finished. Because that's what this is. Theft. You ordered food, you ate food, and now you're refusing to pay. That's not a complaint about service. That's a crime. Derek's face went red. Who the hell do you think you are? Mr. Hart reached into his cardigan pocket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he drew out a simple business card and held it out. Derek snatched it from his hand, glanced at it, and froze. The color drained from his face so fast, Emma thought he might faint. No, Derek whispered. No way. Justin grabbed the card. What? Who is he? Kyle looked over Justin's shoulder, and his eyes went wide. The card was simple. William Hart, Chairman and CEO, Hart Hospitality Group. Mr. Hart smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile anymore. Hart Hospitality Group owns this restaurant. We own 43 restaurants across the Midwest. And we have investments in several companies, including... He paused, pulling out his phone and tapping the screen. Wolf Properties. Derek's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Your father, Mr. Hart continued, recently took out a substantial loan from one of our investment partners to expand into the Denver market. The paperwork crossed my desk last month. I signed off on it personally. He turned to Justin. And your uncle works for our Chicago branch, doesn't he? Justin Carlson? Related to Richard Carlson in our accounting department. Justin nodded mutely. Thought so. You have his nervous energy. Mr. Hart looked at Kyle. And you? I don't recognize your name, but I'm guessing you're just along for the ride, aren't you? Kyle looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. Mr. Hart put his phone away. Now, let's discuss what's going to happen next. You three are going to sit back down. You're going to pay your bill in full. And you're going to leave Emma a 50% tip for having to endure your behavior. 50%? Derek sputtered. That's over $2,000. Consider it a stupidity tax, Mr. Hart said calmly. Or would you prefer I call your father right now? I have him on speed dial. We're golfing next month. I can tell him how his son behaves when he thinks no one important is watching. Derek pulled out his credit card so fast, he almost dropped it. Wait, Mr. Hart said. Before you pay, there's one more thing. Derek looked terrified. What? Apologize to Emma. And mean it. If I detect even a hint of sarcasm, that bill doubles, and I make the phone call anyway. The three men turned to face Emma. She was frozen, unable to process what was happening. Derek cleared his throat. His voice was small. I'm sorry. We were jerks. We had no right to treat you that way. I'm sorry too, Justin mumbled. Kyle looked directly at Emma, and there were actual tears in his eyes. I'm really sorry. I should have said something. I should have stood up to them. I'm sorry. Emma didn't know what to say. She just nodded. Now pay, Mr. Hart commanded. Derek ran his card. His hand was shaking as he added the tip, exactly 50%. The total came to $6,300. When the receipt printed, Mr. Hart took it and handed it to Emma personally. This is yours. Every penny. Emma stared at the receipt. $6,300. It was more money than she'd made in the last 3 months combined. Mr. Hart, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet, he replied. We're not finished. He turned back to Derek. One final thing. You're banned. All three of you. From every single one of our restaurants. If I see you in any of our establishments again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. But, do you understand? Mr. Hart's voice was steel. All three men nodded. Good. Now get out of my restaurant. They practically ran for the door, not even stopping to grab their jackets. As the door swung shut behind them, the entire restaurant burst into applause. Emma stood there, tears streaming down her face, still clutching the receipt. Mr. Hart patted her shoulder gently. Emma, dear, do you have a moment to talk? Let's sit down. Emma followed Mr. Hart back to his corner booth, her legs shaking so badly she could barely walk. She slid into the seat across from him, and that's when the dam broke. She put her face in her hands and sobbed great, heaving sobs of relief and exhaustion and disbelief. Mr. Hart didn't rush her. He simply pushed a clean napkin across the table and waited. After a few minutes, Emma wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That was so unprofessional. Nonsense, Mr. Hart said. You just survived a battle. Soldiers are allowed to cry when the war is over. Emma let out a shaky laugh. I thought I was going to lose my job. I thought they'd make me pay for that meal. I was calculating in my head. If I worked every single shift, if I didn't eat, maybe I could pay it back over 6 months. That shouldn't be a thought any worker has to have, Mr. Hart said firmly. And it's one of the many reasons I like to visit my restaurants unannounced. Corporate offices only tell you so much. The real truth is on the ground, watching how people treat each other when they think nobody's looking. He poured himself a fresh cup of coffee from the pot on his table. Emma, how long have you been working here? Almost 2 years. I started when I got accepted to nursing school at Roosevelt. Nursing school. Mr. Hart nodded approvingly. That's hard. One of the hardest programs there is. It's killing me, Emma admitted. The exhaustion in her voice was bone deep. I'm working 40 hours a week here, plus 20 hours of clinical training at the hospital, plus studying. I'm behind on rent. I'm behind on my student loans. Last week I fainted during a shift at the hospital because I'd forgotten to eat for 2 days. Mr. Hart's face grew sad. Why nursing? If you don't mind me asking. Emma looked down at her hands. My mom died when I was 17. Pancreatic cancer. By the time they found it, it was too late. But that's the thing. It shouldn't have been too late. She'd been having symptoms for months. But she worked 3 jobs, no insurance, and she kept putting off seeing a doctor because she couldn't afford it. When she finally went, they told her she had 3 months. Mr. Hart listened silently. She died in a hospital, surrounded by nurses who actually cared. These women worked 12-hour shifts, and they still took the time to sit with her, hold her hand, explain what was happening. One nurse, Gloria, she stayed 2 hours past her shift just to braid my mom's hair because my mom mentioned she'd always loved braids. Emma's voice cracked. I want to be that person for someone else. Your mother would be very proud of you, Mr. Hart said gently. I hope so. But Mr. Hart, I'm not sure I'm going to make it. After rent, after loans, after groceries, I'm negative every month. And now my landlord is threatening eviction. I have 1 week. Mr. Hart was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee. Then he said, Emma, I've been in business for 50 years. I've learned to spot 2 types of people. Those who work because they have to, and those who work because they're called to. You're the second type. The world needs more of you. That's kind, but it doesn't pay my rent. No, it doesn't, Mr. Hart agreed. He pulled out his phone and made a note. What year are you in? 2nd year. I have 2 years left, plus a year of residency. And your total remaining tuition? Emma blinked. Why? Humor an old man. What's the number? About $48,000 for the next 2 years. Mr. Hart nodded, typing into his phone. And your rent? Mr. Hart, I don't understand. Just tell me. $1,200 a month. More typing. Clinical hours don't pay? No, sir. We pay the hospital to train there. Highway robbery, Mr. Hart muttered. He set down his phone and looked directly at her. Emma, Hart Hospitality Group has a scholarship fund. We give grants to employees pursuing degrees in fields that serve their communities, teaching, nursing, social work, that sort of thing. I started it 20 years ago after my wife passed away. She was a teacher. She always said the people who serve others deserve to be supported. Emma's heart was pounding. I didn't know about any scholarship. Most people don't. We don't advertise it much because, frankly, we get overwhelmed with applications. But I have discretionary authority to award immediate grants in special circumstances. He smiled. I'd say tonight qualifies as special circumstances. Mr. Hart, what are you saying? I'm saying that I'm awarding you a full scholarship for your remaining tuition at Roosevelt. Additionally, I'm providing a monthly living stipend of $2,000 for the next 3 years, so you can cut back your hours here and focus on your studies. Emma couldn't breathe. That's over $70,000. Closer to 90, actually, with the living stipend. I can't accept that. Why not? Because it's too much. Because I'm just a waitress. Because you think you don't deserve it? Mr. Hart's voice was gentle but firm. Emma, let me tell you something. I've met a lot of people in my life. I've met billionaires and politicians and celebrities. And you know what I've learned? Money doesn't make people better. Character does. You showed more character tonight, more grace, more dignity, more strength than most people show in a lifetime. Emma was crying again. Besides, Mr. Hart continued, this isn't charity. It's an investment. You're going to be a brilliant nurse. You're going to save lives. Maybe hundreds of lives. Maybe thousands. And one of those lives might be someone I love, or someone who goes on to cure cancer, or someone who just needed one person to care. He reached across the table and patted her hand. That's worth every penny. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me by graduating. Thank me by becoming the nurse you're meant to be. And someday, when you're established and successful, pay it forward. Help someone else the way I'm helping you. Emma nodded, unable to speak. Now, Mr. Hart said, checking his watch, it's late. Go home. Rest. Monday morning, come to our corporate office on Michigan Avenue. Ask for my assistant, Patricia. She'll have all the paperwork ready for you to sign. And Emma? Yes. Take tomorrow off. I'll clear it with your manager. You've earned a day off. 5 years later, on a bright Tuesday morning, Emma Rodriguez walked into Northwestern Memorial Hospital wearing navy blue scrubs and a white coat with her name embroidered on it. Dr. Emma Rodriguez, RN, BSN, Trauma Nurse Specialist. She'd done it. She'd graduated top of her class, passed her boards on the first try, and been recruited by one of the best hospitals in Chicago. She'd just finished her first year in the trauma unit, and she was already being considered for a leadership position. Her apartment was in a nice neighborhood now. She drove a reliable car. She had savings in the bank. But more importantly, she had the life her mother had dreamed for her. Emma was checking her schedule for the day when her pager buzzed. Trauma incoming. Car accident. Multiple injuries. ETA 5 minutes. She ran. The ambulance arrived with sirens wailing. Emma and her team were ready. The paramedics wheeled in the first patient, a man in his 30s, unconscious, bleeding from a head wound. What do we have? Emma called out. Derek Wolfe, age 32, car accident, possible traumatic brain injury, blood pressure dropping. Emma froze for a fraction of a second. Then her training kicked in. Get him into trauma bay too. I need a CT scan, full blood panel, and someone call neurosurgery, now. Her team moved like a machine. Emma worked on Derek Wolfe for 3 hours straight. She stopped the bleeding. She stabilized his vitals. She held his hand when he briefly regained consciousness and panicked, whispering, "You're safe. I've got you." She didn't know if he recognized her. She didn't care. He was a patient. He needed help. That's all that mattered. By the time Derek was stable and moved to ICU, Emma was exhausted. She was washing her hands at the sink when Dr. Patel, the attending physician, came up beside her. "Hell of a save, Rodriguez. That guy owes you his life." "Just doing my job," Emma said. "You know who that is, right? Derek Wolfe. His family owns half the real estate in this city. His father is already on his way. Should be here within the hour." Emma nodded. "Make sure family services is ready. Head injuries are scary for loved ones." An hour later, Emma was writing up her notes when a nurse approached. "Emma, there's a man in the waiting room asking for you. Says his name is William Hart." Emma's head snapped up. She ran to the waiting room. Mr. Hart was there, older now, walking with 2 canes instead of 1. But his eyes were as sharp as ever. When he saw Emma, his face broke into a huge smile. "There she is. There's my star." Emma hugged him carefully, mindful of his age. "Mr. Hart, what are you doing here?" "I heard there was an accident involving someone I know. Came to check on things. But look at you." He held her at arm's length. "Dr. Rodriguez. It has a nice ring to it. I'm not a doctor, just a registered nurse." "You're whatever you decide to be," Mr. Hart said. "I'm so proud of you, Emma. I wouldn't be here without you." "Nonsense. I just opened a door. You walk through it." They sat down in the quiet corner of the waiting room. Mr. Hart sighed. "Derek Wolfe is the patient." "Yes. He's stable now. Serious injuries, but he's going to make it." "Did he recognize you?" "I don't think so. And it doesn't matter. He needed help. I helped him." Mr. Hart smiled. "That's the difference between you and people like him. You understand that every life has value." "You taught me that," Emma said. "That night at the restaurant, you didn't have to help me. You could have finished your coffee and left. But you stood up. You showed me that good people still exist." "You showed me the same thing," Mr. Hart replied. "You could have walked away from nursing. You could have given up when things got hard. But you didn't." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Mr. Hart, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why did you do it?" "The scholarship, the money. That was life-changing money." "You didn't know me. Why did you trust me?" Mr. Hart was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My wife, Catherine, she got very sick about 25 years ago. Heart problems. We were at a restaurant when she collapsed. The paramedics came, but it was a young nurse who rode with her in the ambulance who saved her life. This nurse, I never even got her name." She held Catherine's hand, talked to her, kept her calm, did everything right. His eyes were distant, remembering. Catherine lived another 15 years because of that nurse. Good years. Years where we traveled, spent time with grandchildren, celebrated anniversaries. All because one stranger cared enough to do her job with love. He looked at Emma. "That night at the Golden Oak, when I saw those men treating you like you were worthless, I knew they were wrong. I saw the same thing in you that I saw in that nurse all those years ago. Someone who serves because they care, not because they have to. I couldn't let the world break that." Emma was crying. "Thank you. For everything. Thank you for proving me right." Mr. Hart stood up slowly. "Now I should go. I'm sure you have more patients to save." As he shuffled toward the exit, Emma called out, "Mr. Hart?" He turned. "I'm starting a nursing scholarship at Roosevelt. For students who can't afford tuition. I'm calling it the Catherine Hart Memorial Scholarship." Mr. Hart's eyes filled with tears. He simply nodded, unable to speak, and walked out into the sunshine. Emma watched him go, then turned back toward the hospital corridors. She had rounds to finish. She had patients who needed her. And somewhere in the ICU, Derek Wolfe was alive because she'd chosen compassion over revenge. That night, alone in her apartment, Emma thought about how far she'd come. From a terrified waitress on her knees to a nurse saving lives. From drowning in debt to building a scholarship for others. She thought about what Mr. Hart had said. Pay it forward. And she smiled, because that's exactly what she planned to do. The end. Remember, Your current situation is not your final destination. Treat everyone with kindness, not because of who they are, but because of who you are. You never know when the person you help, or the person you hurt, might cross your path again.